You're listening to Offer Accepted, the show that is all about fostering careers in real estate and growing your real estate team. Your host is Vanessa Rosenblum. Vanessa is the president of a search firm called Pro REA Staffing, where they help real estate agents hire talented people so that they can grow their businesses. On this show, Vanessa interviews real estate industry professionals from real estate assistants to team leaders of mega teams to learn how they achieved their current level of success and what they're doing to rise to the next level in their career or business. Whether you are exploring a career in real estate or you currently run a large real estate team and you want to be better at recruiting, training, and managing your employees and agents, this is a show you'll want to follow, so don't forget to hit subscribe. All right, let's go to the show. Here's your host, Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. Welcome to the podcast. My guest today is Cathy Anderson. Cathy was a top producing sales agent in Vermont for many years before becoming a highly sought after business coach. Cathy has seen it all as an agent and a coach, and she's had the opportunity to peer behind the curtain of some of the top real estate teams in the country. So today I want to explore three main topics with her. Today we're going to talk about that transition period between being a solo agent and becoming a team leader. I want to talk about some of the struggles that agents face during that growth phase and what they can do to make that transition easier. Then I want to talk about why sharing a set of core values with your team and focusing on team culture matters. She did a great job of fostering culture in her own office, and I know she's a big cheerleader of Simon Sinek's and the whole concept of starting with why. So I plan to get into that with her as well. And then finally, I want to know what she's learned about being an effective and impactful leader, while also maintaining your status as a top producing salesperson. That's certainly no easy feat. So with that, Cathy, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Let's just start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your career in real estate and how you transitioned into coaching.
Okay, so I started in real estate. I left corporate America. I was a regional district manager for a billion-dollar company, and I was traveling more than I cared to. So I said, all right, basically, I'm a salesperson, and what's the biggest thing at home that I can sell? Well, it was houses. So I thought, all right, I'll see if I can work on getting licensed and move in that direction. So I was in a very, very small town, 8,000 people. We had no multiple listing service. We had no board of realtors, none of that stuff. And I got licensed and signed up with a particular company. And lo and behold, Mike Ferry and the Mike Ferry organization did their one and only ever seminar in northern Vermont. So I went and listened, and he does like the corporate America way of doing real estate. And since I had come from that background, I said, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and went from there on up, got an MLS started, got the board of realtors started, built my team, bought a franchise, the whole 9 yards, and that's where the whole thing started, Vanessa.
You had to actually start the local MLS in your area?
Yes,
Is that what you said?
I did.
Oh, my goodness.
I went to my first Mike Ferry seminar, and, there was like 2,000 people there, and he's on stage, and he's saying, you need to call expireds. And I'm sitting in the audience going, why would I call dead people? I don't really understand that. So I was being brave. I went up on stage, and I said, my name is, and I'm from, and I don't understand this. And he said, expired listings. I said, well, how do you know they're expired? He said, through the MLS. I said, I don't even know what that is. And he looked at me like I had three heads. He said, what? I said, okay, looks like I'm going back and figuring out how to get one of these things started, which I did.
Wow, amazing. So, 8,000 people, did you go beyond your local market eventually, or how did your business expand over time?
That I was in the highest, the most densely populated area with 8,000 people. So that was the big part.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So you owned that territory pretty darn quick, I can imagine.
Yeah, I really did.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so then how did you transition you grew a real estate team, right? And then you transitioned into coaching. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Back when I started, we didn't call a team. It was basically we were building our business, and we had support staff to help us with what we were doing. So for me, it started out as the definition of a team was administrative staffing. And the rules that I follow, the systematic approach that I take, is when an agent is doing 45 deals or more, that's when they hire their first administrative assistant. And then when they add another 40 deals, they hire their second full-time administrative assistant. And once you've got those pieces in place, then it's time to add team members to the group, buyer's agents, other listing agents, and that structure starts to formulate. You can't have that piece if you don't have, number one, administrative staffing to help process, and number two, if you don't have a good inventory. Who's going to want to go to work with you if you have no listings, right?
Absolutely. And yes. I talk about this all the time. I mean, you have to build your foundation first. And I think people get so excited about, the shiny fun part about having this team of salespeople around them that they miss the most basic part of this process, which is why would anybody work with you, right? If you don't have the support system to help them out.
That's exactly right.
So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. So now you've been coaching for a long time now, right?
Yeah, almost 25 years.
Fantastic. And you coach agents all over the U.S.?
Yeah, I've coached in agents in New Zealand and in London, kind of all over the world. U.S. and Canada are the places that I kind of migrate towards now.
Right. Makes sense. Perfect. So how did your team evolve? So you had your admin staff, and then you eventually hired sales agents as well, right?
Right.
And so what did that look like at the top of your, before you stopped actually selling real estate?
So, and I think one of the things that makes me credible as a coach is that I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so growing a team for me wasn't really a big goal. What I knew was that, okay, where are my talents? My talents and skills lie in talking to people, listening to people, understanding, asking questions, helping people meet their goals, and the administrative stuff. I'm basically a driver personality. I'm task-oriented, and I'm results-oriented, and I get a sense of satisfaction in being incredibly busy. So I knew that if this was my lane, anything that fell outside of that was not something I wanted to participate in. So, for instance, first person I hired was a person to do the listing coordination and transaction coordination, basically the administrative piece of it. Then I hired a person to help me build the systems. So my belief is that it is the consistency with which you approach your daily activities that determines the consistency with which you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And so the more consistent I am with things, the more efficient they become, the faster it happens, and the more business I can do. All right? So that's how I started. Then I started looking at, all right, who could I add to my team? So I added now it's called an ISA, an Inside Sales Associate, to help me with prospecting. I made 52 outbound contacts every single day for years and years and years. Then I had somebody else that made outbound contacts for me as well. The other side of it is, Vanessa, my average commission was really low. That being said, for me it wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't, I want to be the biggest and the greatest and the best. No, it wasn't how much I earned. Excuse me, it was how much I kept. And that was really important to me, so I figured out how to do things inexpensively, quickly, and still with 5-star service. So I interviewed my lenders to see who would be basically a free team member for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I hired a bookkeeper who got everything ready to go to the CPA instead of having a CPA do all of it because it was less expensive. I hired buyer's agents at a reduced commission amount with the agreement that I would train them and I would always have the best listings. So I worked really hard with money management and profitability. That was my number one push. The ego stuff, I didn't really care about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hired a coach that would help me, using acceptable profitability, grow my business. Okay, so what I teach right now, like if I have an individual agent that has a couple of assistants for the administrative stuff, our minimum standard is that they should realize a 65% minimum annual profit, period.
Okay.
All right. Most teams realize a 35% minimum annual profit.
Mm-hmm.
In the systematic approach we take, we work an individual agent with just a few assistants, which, technically in today's terms would be a small team. But a regular team where you have buyer's agents and maybe listing agents, we run on a 50% profit margin on that. So these are important things for us to take a look at when building teams.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned something earlier that struck out. So you said you made 52 contacts a day. How did you decide it was 52 contacts?
The beauty of the system that we work with is that we create predictability and duplicatability. Mm-hmm. So when I told you that Mike Ferry made one trip and one trip only to Vermont, and he did, and only ever has done one trip, and it was 2 hours away, and I went, and he said at the time, if you want to do 50 deals a year, you need to make 50 contacts a day. That was just one of the, he'd studied the numbers because any selling job is a numbers game. Mm-hmm. And I knew that from my previous work. And so I wanted to go from my first year of 26 transactions to my second year of 52. So I said, okay, well, if I want to do 52 deals, I better make 52 contacts. And then I figured, okay, now that I've got my numbers and I know how many contacts I need to take a listing, how many listings I need to make a closed deal, how many closed deals to make the projected income, I can reverse engineer anything that I want with predictability and duplicatability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. So 50% profit margin when you have buyer's agents, 65% annual profit when you're working just with your administrative staff. Mm-hmm. I think those are really great numbers to focus on. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what are some of the costs that are accounting for the reduction in profitability once you add buyer's agents?
Because buyer's agents typically demand a split. So even if you had, it's hard to realize a profit margin of 65% if you're giving 50% of a commission away.
Right, but wouldn't the idea be that you're capturing more leads so that you're not giving up your commission? Like you're focusing on buyers, so you'd be doing more deals overall, basically, I guess is what I'm getting at. But are there other costs associated that agents need to be aware of when they're, deciding they want to bring buyers agents?
Yeah, there's a lot of additional costs when you have teams. And so I think you have to be really, really careful in how you structure some of these. I'm looking at a person's numbers analyzer right in front of me right now for a coaching call that I did this morning. And what I know is that the reason people come to work for an agent is because they've got support staff to process, because they've got great listings, and because at some level they're a pretty good leader. They kind of like to hang out with this person and be around this person. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so that means that they're going to want to take some of the agent's, the lead person's time. Well, right now, looking at this particular person's numbers analyzer, I know that his income generated per hour prospected is $718.75. So if you're one of my buyer's agents and you want to have a 30-minute conversation with me, I know it's going to cost me $350.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that you can dial it in like that and really will value your time.
Yeah. It's a real business.
And make sure. Yeah, exactly. Just like a real business.
It's a real one.
Oh my God, I love it. No, I think that's really great. And you're right. I mean, I talk to agents all the time who just, they want buyer's agents. They want the idea of a team. They want to grow this big team, but they're not focused on the bottom line and the profitability of it. And they're not factoring in the cost of their time and everything they're going to need to do to support those buyer's agents.
And I think that's when your question about the why, they have to take a careful look at themselves with regard to why do you want a team? Because they usually have an expectation that, woohoo, I can have a team, I can, be done at 4, I can come in at 10, I can make lots of money because my team's going to be doing this. That's not really the case. That's not how it works.
Right. They don't have to deal with those pesky buyers anymore. I just want to get those people off my plate. Yeah.
No.
So what should somebody be thinking about if they think they want to grow a team? How should they be evaluating themselves to determine whether they're really cut out for it? I mean, yes, the why is part of it, but are some people just not cut out to be leaders of teams? Should some people really just stick to being a solo agent? How does somebody kind of get to the truth with themselves on that?
Yeah, I think it has to be an individual process for each person. I owned a franchise, and when I signed my franchise agreement, they said, you need to hire one person a year. And I thought, okay, this is a 5-year agreement. I'm licensed. I'll get assistant number 1 license. There's one hire. I'll get assistant number 2 license. There's the third year hire. And then if they want to take my franchise away after that, they can go ahead. I didn't want a lot of people. I didn't want to manage a lot of people. I definitely didn't want a large office. I wanted to be the smallest franchise in the world, but the most profitable and the highest production. Me and 2 assistants did over 200 transactions.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I went home at 5 o'clock every day, and I did it in 4 days a week because at the time I was coaching. Now, that does not happen right off the bat. That took 12 years to get to that point.
Yeah, so were both of those assistants with you for most of that time? I mean, what was your turnover like in those admin roles?
My turnover wasn't big, but what I find in the people that I coach is that an assistant will stay with an agent about 2 to 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
if the agent's a good manager.
That's if
they're good.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a survey recently, and the average turnover that I found just across the board was about a 50% turnover in admin staff every year. How insane is that?
Yeah, that's crazy. I've already I started coaching calls at 6:30 this morning, and it's now 10:50, and 3 people have talked to me about administrative issues already.
Yeah.
It's
my
not
God.
lunchtime yet.
Oh, my goodness. So what did you do to get 2 assistants to the point where you could handle 200 deals a year without just the wheels flying off the bus?
Yeah, and sometimes you would feel like the wheel was flying off the bus, but I've noticed that there are phases that an agent goes through, and from my own experience, me too. And you go through the beginning phases of I worked 7 days a week for 2 years to get the ball rolling, get the bus rolling, and then I got it rolling, and I got my stamina up to talk to 52 people, and I got to where I knew what to say, how to say it, who to say it to. I wasn't great, but I was pretty good. Then I got into the second phase, which I termed the cocky phase. And in the cocky phase, I was pretty doggone good. I was doing 75 deals. I was, hot ticket. I was taking Sundays off. I was, sometimes taking Thursdays off. I was getting pretty good. And I got stuck because at that point, I thought I knew everything. So I got stuck between 75 transactions and 100 transactions for 4 years. And it goes back to the old saying, if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got, and it may not be what you want. So I wasn't looking deep enough to figure out what do I need to tweak or what change do I need to make in order to go to the next level. So it's a constant evolution. So then you go to the next phase, And then when you finally get to this particular point, I'll tell you, it is so much easier to do 150 deals a year, me and 2 assistants, than it is to do 75. Now you're probably thinking, well, why is that, right?
Yes. Tell me more.
Okay, so the systems are down. I know, meaning they are right there. When I take a listing, I know, boom, boom, boom. What do I have to say when I walk in the door? And I would say something like, oh my gosh, Vanessa, I'm so excited to get your home on the market and get it sold. And I'm so excited that I have a tendency to talk too much. Now, I've scheduled us a full hour to be here, not a minute longer, a full hour. And if I haven't finished and gotten your signature on this contract at the end of an hour, just grab the contract, sign it, and shove me out the door. I've got another appointment after that.
That's fantastic.
All right.
Oh, I love it.
So I had to manage their expectations in order to be able to do 3 listing appointments a day after making 52 contacts, returning phone calls, and doing lead follow-up. So my job was prospect, lead follow-up, go on appointments, and I delegated negotiating contracts. So typically we tell an agent they're PLAN, and I decided I didn't want a PLAN, I wanted a PLA. So I got to go to work and play every day. All right. So it comes down to an efficiency model. How can I give people everything that they want and do it skinny? So we had our systems operating kind of like a McDonald's would. You know, you order the hamburger and it goes from this person to this person to this person out the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a system. So if you think about it, I was like a little manufacturing company. Make the calls, set the appointment. The appointment is a 5-step process to make sure that it goes exactly the way I anticipate it's going to go. I tell the sellers what's going to happen next. That happens next, and then it becomes a transaction. I do the after the transaction follow-up stuff. They become a past client. They send me referrals. So that piece of it starts going faster and faster and faster and faster. And then, because we've done a 5-star job with people, they start calling us and saying, hey, Betty Lou Bozo wants to list her house. And I'm like, woo-hoo. All right? So
yes. So, but just like the volume of the work, I'm picturing 2 admins dealing with a very productive agent, getting 200 transactions a year out the door. I mean, those 2 were as highly focused and systematized as you, like clockwork.
Yes.
So then you did end up bringing buyer's agents onto the team eventually, right? And so how did that impact the admins? I mean, this is something that I see happen a lot. So you have 2 admins or you have an admin, everything's going great. The agent decides to bring in a buyer's agent. That buyer's agent may or may not toe the line, and it starts to throw a wrench into things. Did that happen to you? How did you prevent that from happening? Tell me about that.
At this point, I'm going to transfer over into some of the people that I coach. For me, the buyer's agent thing, the profit margins weren't there, and I did more business, me and 2 assistants, than I did with buyer's agents. So, and in less time. So the first thing that a team leader, if they're a good salesperson, needs to understand is that whether it's an ISA, a telemarketer, whatever you want to call all these people, a buyer's agent, any of these people, they're not going to be as good as you. So that's first, all right?
Yes.
Secondly, the reason buyer's agents come to work for an agent is they want something, and you got to uncover what do they want. What is their expectation? If their expectation is something you can't provide, then you don't fuss about it. All right? With regard to the administrative staffing, as you build your team, you have to it becomes a lot more complex. I can remember days saying, okay, today all I want to do is bag groceries at the local grocery store and have my big decision be, does the bread or the eggs go on top?
Right. Just make this simple. This is too much.
Simple. It gets really complicated. And I said for years, if I had known it was going to be this complicated, I don't know that I would have done it. I mean, it gets complicated. And how do you keep track of the leads, and how do you keep track of who gets the leads, and what's the conversion ratios, and what training do they need, and how good are they going to get, and how do I keep them motivated, and how do I keep them challenged and educated, and how do I keep them from, backstabbing each other, and oh my gosh, there's so much to deal with. So ultimately, one of the guys that I coach in the Chicago area will do a lot. Anyway, like 1,000 transactions, and he's got 2 listing coordinators and a backup person for them, like an assistant to the 2 listing coordinators. He's got 2 transaction coordinators and a backup person for them, and he's got a runner. Again, what we're working with him, though, is to stay within that 50% profit margin for a bigger team. So we look at his numbers all the time. If you're a team leader and you're not looking at your numbers, you may not be the best team leader.
Yes, very true. And so when you have an agent who is ready to hire a buyer's agent, what are some of the best practices they can employ to make sure that person is onboarded smoothly, that it doesn't wreak havoc with their administrative team?
So, part of it, I think the initiation phase, the initial beginning of it, where they get an orientation, is really important. I think that people learn they're either visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learners. And so you want to know what type of a learner they are, and you can ask a few questions in order to figure that out. And then you want to say, okay, I'm going to sit you down with my listing coordinator. So I'm going to tell you first, here's the flow. Here's how the business operates, just basics. Then I'm going to have you sit down with, for instance, the listing coordinator, and you're going to sit with the listing coordinator for a couple of days and see exactly what happens, including going out and putting up signs and lockboxes and all, the whole thing. Then I'm going to have you sit with the transaction coordinator, and you're going to go through that whole thing so you can see kind of how that flows. Then perhaps you're going to sit with, in some cases, a lender or an escrow or a title person, who I also think of as being part of your team, so that they can get a really good foundation. But I think you said something to me earlier about, I call it the environment of the overall office. And if that buyer's agent doesn't fit into the culture of your office, whatever it is you've decided you want your culture to be, I don't care how talented they are, it's not going to work. It's a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's talk more about that, because I think, one of the reasons I was encouraged to speak to you is because you had such a great culture on your team, through my connection with Kathleen Metcalf. So how did you consciously decide what you wanted your culture to be, or how did that evolve? And then how did you serve as the culture keeper on your team?
Okay, so it was an evolution. And when I first started, I worked like a crazy fool. An absolute crazy fool to get the ball rolling. And, it takes that to get a new company off the ground. And so what I said to myself was, all right, if I'm going to spend this many hours in this office, it better be fun. So the number one culture piece was fun. Then I said, all right, I need to have a mission statement. God bless Brian Tracy. I love Brian Tracy, and he said, I stole his mission. Some people call it doing research. So I did research, and I stole his mission. And his mission was to help you achieve your goals faster with my help than without it. Period.
I like that.
It's my coaching business mission statement also, to help you achieve your goals faster with my help than without it. So 2 things. Number 1, we want it to be fun. Number 2, we have a mission statement, and that was the beginning of it. All right? Then from there, you start to see how this thing begins to evolve. Now, what I know now, you want to look at the culture. What I like to do is, let's look at 2 or 3 of the primary components of your business, all right? So if you've got a team, wouldn't one of those components be developing team players? All right, so that might be one of the core value that we have. We are team players, all right? Another piece, based on the mission statement I shared with you, could be we put our clients' interests first. That could be number 2. Because it's a business, if you think, if we're just going to skinny it down to 3, Vanessa, maybe you say we are results-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So those are our 3 primary focuses. Now we sit down and we go, okay, as team players, what does that mean? Well, maybe we have a safe environment. Maybe we bring our A game. Maybe we're respectful. For me, we have fun. We are humble and appreciative. These are things that maybe we work seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. So, how do we develop what does team really mean? All right, then we look at, okay, we're going to put our clients' interests first. Well, I don't know, what does that mean? Maybe we provide 5-star service. Communication is a big thing. Maybe we communicate proactively to set expectations and then to meet and exceed those expectations. Okay, maybe we work with accuracy. We work in a timely fashion. We're market experts. We're honest. We have integrity. I think my little tagline was honesty, integrity, and enthusiasm. And they got all 3. Okay, and high ethical standards. Maybe that's another piece of the client's interests. Okay, and then maybe go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And how did you get back on track if you felt like you guys were not working in alignment with your values, or maybe you hired somebody who wasn't,
Okay. So that's a one-on-one conversation. That's not something that you do in front of everybody. Obviously, you want to go. So a couple of things. All right. It's harder when we do with things that are not exact situations. But if you say that, maybe somebody came in and they're bringing in their personal crap into the office. Okay, that's not what an office is for. And sitting around and saying, oh my gosh, this happened, my kid or this, or my husband or my dog, or whatever it is. So one of the things that I did, I said, because remember, our number 1 in my office was fun. I said, hey, you guys, I have a terrific idea. Come on out here in the hall. And they're like, what? I said, look at this. I brought a great big bucket in today. And they'd say, well, what's the bucket for? This is where you're going to put all your personal stuff, all the problems, all the challenges, all the issues that you have at home or with your car or with the weather or anything outside of this safe space that we call an office. And you put them in the bucket, and you can pick them up on your way out at the end of the day. But we don't refer to them again all day.
I love that. What a joyful, fun way to say, cut the crap, get back to work. Oh my God, that's so great. I heard you also used to have a water gun. Tell me about the water gun.
Yes, I did. We had squirt guns. What I realized is that I was a pretty good salesperson. And being on the phone for 5 hours, it's not a lot of fun. I'll be the first one. You're never going to learn to love prospecting, and it is the engine that drives your business, so you better get good at it. You better be able to tolerate it. But I would find that there were certain days when I'd think, I don't really feel like doing this anymore. Call number 38, somebody was ugly to me. I'd want and so I would get bored with that whole process. So I'd hop out the door and I'd say, I need to go preview a couple of homes for the showing I've got tomorrow, so I'll see you guys right after lunch. And they'd look at me and go, okay. And I'd think, these guys really believe that I'm going to actually do my job every day. And look at me, I just sold them on the fact that I'm not going to do it today. So I said, and this is where I had to get myself under control. And they would come in periodically when I was prospecting, and they'd knock on the door, and they'd walk in, and that would interrupt me, and that was a welcome break. And I realized we need to fix this. So I came in one day, and I said, all right, you guys have a squirt gun. Each of you have a squirt gun on your desk. I said, and I have a squirt gun on my desk. So the rule is don't wear silk or something that can be damaged by water for the next 30 days. And then if you guys come in the back room while I'm prospecting, I'm going to shoot you right in the head. And if I come out of my assigned seat, you have the permission to unload on me and shoot me in the head and any other part you want to shoot. So we played that game. Again, fun was a big thing.
I love that. That's when Cathy told me that, when Kathleen told me that, I was just dying. I'm like, that's fantastic. What a great way to keep everybody in a fun way focused on the things they're supposed to be doing. Can you think about some of the teams you coach who do this well? And you don't need to name names, but can you think of teams that have really embraced having a set of core values that they operate from, and how that has impacted their team and their profitability?
Yeah, without a doubt. Absolutely, without a doubt. I think once you take the culture, and everybody understands the culture, and you have to have regular meetings with the culture, and you need to have the culture posted in front of you, and you need to, we put mirrors in front of everybody's face with little smiley faces, stuck around the mirror so that it would remind everybody, smile, when you're on the phone, because we want people to feel welcome and like not like they're interrupting us when they call in. But yeah, I've got several teams that work really, really well with a culture. A lot of what's important to understand is that there's an emotional side to life and there's a logical side to life. And the cultures that seem to work are the ones that can transition from one to the other. Meaning, if I, as a coach, if I have an agent that's over here going, oh my God, blah, 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 I can see they have jumped the fence. They're over here on the emotional side. So a team leader that can help a person that goes from that emotional side, maybe a client called in and they kind of let them have it and up one side and down the other and blah, 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 blah. So they take that and they translate that back into numbers. Numbers will always get you out of emotion and into logic so that they can come back. And then once they're back, they can say, okay, now remember, one of the things we're going to do is always put our clients' interests first. This week, we've got a goal to list 5 properties and to provide 5-star service to each of these. So let's talk about the numbers and where you are in your scorecard and how well you're doing with your people to keep them in that logical side, but then to use the culture items as teachable moments. How does this culture thing apply to this particular situation? Let's look at it. Let's get out of the emotional side. Let's jump the fence. Let's get back on the logical side, and let's walk through it. So keeping
I like that, because you to ask you was, what about the people who just feel like it's all too rah-rah? They're just like, come in, shut up, do your work. Like, I don't want to deal with all this stuff. It's too touchy-feely. I was going to ask you, like, what do you say to those people? But I think you sort of answered my question, which is, well, focus on the logical piece of that. Would you say that's right? Like, focus on.
I would agree with you. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I would agree with you. They're going to go to the emotional side, particularly when you're, working with the public. We reviewed the team goals every Monday morning. We reviewed every transaction. We reviewed every day. If somebody was a new team leader, they had, a new team member, they had to answer 3 questions. What did I accomplish today? What's on my list for tomorrow? And what do I have questions about? Every day. Kathleen helped me with those. And then if they're there a while longer, you do that at the end of the week. And then once a month, you go over the goals. Again, stick to the numbers, and they'll keep you logical and out of the emotional. But if you look at it, Vanessa, a team leader's job is very similar to a sales manager's job, particularly on the production side versus the admin side. And on the production side, the team leader's job is to educate and motivate. So they need a certain amount of rah-rah to get their enthusiasm up and to get them excited about the opportunities. But then to educate them on how to turn those opportunities in that rah-rah into dollars and cents.
Yeah, I think that's great. And then how, at some point on your team, you had to grow at least one of your admins up to a point where they were really acting more as an operations manager. Like you said, you were only focused on sales. Someone else was dealing with everything else. What was that transition like for you, getting your admin to the point where they were able to make decisions and you could trust them to act with authority in your office and just get things done on your behalf?
I think one of the things you have to do is you have to empower people to take ownership of their job. Okay, the number one reason people do what they do is for recognition. And if somebody doesn't own their job, they never get the recognition that they're, whether they know they want it or not. And I'm not saying, fanfare and balloons. I'm saying, gosh, you did a great job today. Or they get somebody that calls in and says, gosh, so-and-so did a really great job. I really appreciate all that they've done. So they have to be able to take ownership. When they take ownership, they make mistakes. But as a team leader, the team leader has to understand that nobody comes to work for you hoping that they can screw everything up. That's not their goal.
That's right.
Their goal is to do a good job, so you have to give them the tools that they need to do that good job. For me, the operations person, she was an office manager at the time, and the person that ultimately bought my company and still owns my company, and still 20 years later has my assistant working for her.
Wow.
I know. That's probably as much small
amazing.
town as anything else. But you'll find the people that will begin to rise up, and they'll take on more responsibility, and they'll crave more responsibility to get the additional recognition that they need. And so I find that person will begin to come up through the ranks. I find that hiring from within is simpler than hiring somebody from the outside. Not to say that an outside consultant isn't, I think, a critical factor. So, when you get that other set of eyes looking in, I think you see things differently. But for me, I was really lucky. That person came up through the ranks.
I love what you said about you have to give them authority and understand that they're going to make mistakes, and give them that space to make mistakes and understand they're not trying to screw everything up. Because I do see that where somebody says, I want them to take ownership. Why aren't they just taking authority of, within their job, and then they're frustrated when mistakes are made, and there's this spiral that happens. And I think that's a hard balance for agents. They're letting go, things aren't going right, they're supposed to still let go. How do you coach agents through that when they have someone who's talented, who needs to be moved up in the organization, but there's stumbling blocks along the way?
Yeah, so first, in life there are only two outcomes. We either win or we learn. So today's either a winning day or it's a learning day, and you're going to have both. So the process that I like to go through is telling a new person, in the first 30 days, I'm basically going to review with you every day what you're doing. We're going to look at what questions you have, what's on your list for tomorrow. I'm going to pretty much tell you what to do. I'm going to answer all your questions. I'm going to do everything that I can to give you the foundation that you need. All right. Second 30 days. Now, you're going to come to me with questions. I'm going to still tell you what to do, but I'm going to ask you, when you come to me with a question, to come to me with what you believe to be a solution. So now you're going to take a little bit more responsibility, and you're going to figure this stuff out, because you got to be solution-oriented in this business, in any business, but particularly in this business. So you're going to come to me with the question and the proposed solution, and then we'll say, yes, that's good, and I would also add this, or give it a little twist here and there. In the third 30 days, you're going to take the reins. We're going to meet every single week, and I'm available at this time every single day. And you have to recognize you're going to win or you're going to learn, and some of the learning is going to be difficult. Some of it's going to be really expensive for both of us. But I want you to know I support you, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that you have the skills, the training, the education, and the tools to use in order to be 100% spot on.
I love that. And as you're going through that process, what are some of the red flags you look for to decide, this person isn't going to be able to rise to the challenge? This is not going to work out.
It's those people that say, "No, I don't think that'll work. No, that's not going to work. No, I don't know. I don't think this can be done." Or that person was terrible to me on the phone, and I really hate him, and I'm not going to talk to him again. You can tell right off the bat, I think. Within the first 30 days, I typically like to give it 90 days, but because there's that ride on that high of a new job, and then all of a sudden they go, boom. There's 4 phases of learning. And when they hit phase 2, oh, man, they hit the wall quite often because that's where they really see what their deficiencies are, and that's hard to look at. So that can be a challenging piece. But if you've got somebody that has tried and really is going to do the best that they can, and maybe they read some stuff outside of work, or they study, and they just take the initiative to want to be there and want to support you.
I think that's perfect. Can you go through the 4 phases of learning for people listening?
Sure. Phase 1 is unconscious incompetence. That's basically where you don't know what you don't know. It's kind of blissful if you think about it. All right. Second phase is conscious incompetence. And that's a tough one, because now I can see that I should know how to do this, but I don't really know how to do this. Oh, my gosh. And then there comes conscious competence. Okay, I have to pay attention, and I'm pretty good. And the fourth phase is unconscious competence. We've all experienced that, at least if we have a driver's license. You'll go from point A to point B, and you'll be all involved in your head, and you get to point B, and you go, wow, I can't believe I'm already here. How'd I get here, right?
Yes, and that's why I always tell agents, when your new hire is learning their job, that's when they need to document the systems, because at some point they're going to know it and they're not going to be able to teach it because it's just obvious. Like, why don't you know that you're supposed to call Sam about X, Y, Z? You know? Yes. And like, it's much, much harder. I used to work with, these assistants who'd been on the job for 5 or 10 years, and it was so hard for them to finally document things, because they're like, I got it. It's in my head. We're all good. And we're like, no.
Yeah. It has to be totally idiot-proof. And I tell them that the reason you want to document this, Betty Lou Bozo, is so that you can go on vacation. If it's not documented, you're here 365 days of the year. We can't do without you. Do you want to go on vacation? Yep. Write it down and make it idiot-proof.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said earlier about you left at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you only worked 4 days a week. So, I have agents who want their assistants to sleep with their cell phone, and, they're sending text messages at 5 a.m. How did you do so many deals and have balance in your life? And I'm presuming you didn't have your assistants work 24/7 on your behalf, that there was structure for the whole team.
Yeah, when I hired people need to know what to expect. People have an expectation, and I believe if we manage those expectations, nobody ever would be disappointed about anything ever. So when I hired somebody, I said, your job is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, with an hour for lunch. You're the 12:30 to 1:30 group. We had an 11:30 to 12:30 group, so that we were staggered. But so that was the first thing. Now, everybody has, my assistant's email address is support@CathyAnderson.net. It's not their name. It's not their Gmail email. It's support@CathyAnderson.net. I would give a phone. We called it the bat phone, and it was red. It was really pretty hot. Anyway, they'd have the bat phone, and we did rotational answering the phone for additional pay, particularly on weekends if that was required. Or the buyer's agents would sign up and say, I want the bat phone. So, we worked on it like that. Now, you would periodically, and I had this happen just a couple of weeks ago from somebody I coached. She was on vacation, and I talked with one of her assistants, and she said, the thing I don't like is that there's no downtime. I never get to take time off. And I said, well, don't you have weekends off? And she said, well, yes and no. And I said, well, what do you mean yes and no? She said, well, I get emails all weekend. I said, you're kidding. What email address do you get them from? And she said her business email address. And I said, let me ask you a question. Why are you looking at business emails on your off time? Oh, she said. So the agent has to know that the emails are not going to be answered during off times, period. Okay? And when the person is on, the person needs to be on. So you have to set those. You got to have the rules. You got to have the guidelines.
I think you get happier people and more productive people when they're not feeling like they're always on, and they can step away. Well, I want to wrap up. I know you have another call, but do you have any books or classes or anything that you think any other resources you could point agents to who want to become better managers and better at being a team leader?
Yeah, you know what, there are so many books that someone can read, and it depends on what the ultimate goals are. There's a great book called Traction, and it's, who wrote Traction? Oh, and I know because I've read it like 43 times. It's the Orange book. It's a little more detailed, and not everybody would like it. Gino Wickman is the author, and his dad was Floyd Wickman, who is a real estate motivational speaker. And so they're from the Midwest, Michigan. It's very detailed. So it gets into culture, it gets into 10-year vision, it gets into reverse engineering, it gets into the monthly meetings, the monthly nuts. I mean, it's very, very detailed. I coached with them for a bit because I wanted to learn about it so that I could help the people that I work with. A lot of what I find that team leaders need to read are books about coaches.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, particularly sports coaches. So I read a boatload of sports coach books.
That's such a great perspective. I hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end of the day, I take a look at it and I say, it's the old golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And if you're going to come flying in the office with your hair on fire at some point, you got to let your staff know, today you need to have my back because I've jumped the fence. I'm on the emotional side, and I'm having a hard time climbing back over.
You're like, I'll get your back next time, right?
Right. I got you next time, but I need you today.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so great. Well, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I really appreciate all of your insight. You have so many incredible nuggets of wisdom, and you brought up things I hadn't thought of before. So I appreciate that.
I'm more than happy to help, Vanessa. Good luck with you on everything that you do. And if you need any additional help, just let me know. I'm here.
Thanks for listening to Offer Accepted, the podcast for fostering careers in real estate and growing a successful real estate team. If you like what you heard today, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. You can also check us out on YouTube. Search Pro REA Staffing and you'll find this and a ton more content all around hiring and managing your growing real estate team and launching your career in real estate. We'll see you in the next episode.